Kevin, thanks for joining us. This could be history in the making. Just describe for us what's going on right now.
Right now, the shuttle is on final approach. So what it's doing is a series of large what are called S-turns, and what that does is it allows the shuttle to slow down from several thousand kilometers per second or per hour, into a speed that allows it to land at Kennedy.
What kind of preparation goes into a landing like this?
Well, what you have is that the shuttle is a unique instrument in the fact that it's going from being a spacecraft which has absolutely no control over its flight aside from its thrusters, but then turning completely into an airplane. So it requires it to go through pressurizing systems, pressurizing the landing gear, all of that, so that it can actually control itself in the atmosphere.
I'm just going to break in here. We're actually getting a live audio feed from Mission Control. We can see the space shuttle now re-entering the atmosphere. We're just going to listen in and watch the landing take place.
Commander Lee Archambault beginning to flare the nose of Discovery up for final approach and landing. And landing gear is down. Main gear touchdown. And nose gear touchdown. Space Shuttle Discovery is rolling out on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center, completing 202 orbits of the Earth, while traveling 5,304,000 miles. This landing marks the 70th shuttle mission to end at KSC. Discovery spent 8 days docked to the International Space Station, leaving behind the first Japanese long-duration crew member and also leaving it more power capability, setting the stage for an increase to 6-person crew in late May. Sandy Magnus, mission specialist, now aboard Discovery, home after 134 days in space, 129 of those aboard the International Space Station. Discovery is completing the 36th voyage of its life and the 125th Space Shuttle mission in the history of the program.
And we are just hearing from NASA Mission Control now that the Space Shuttle Discovery has landed. Kevin, we were sitting here watching the Space Shuttle land. For those of us who have no idea the amount of training that goes into it, it looks just like a plane landing. How difficult is that maneuver?
This is actually much more difficult than it looks, because a lot of the shuttle pilots compare landing the shuttle to flying a brick, because unlike the aerodynamic, the typical commercial airplanes, the shuttle is not as aerodynamic as what it appears to look like. So yes, you get a lot of, the shuttle tends to be very, very heavy, and so that there's a lot of anticipation that the pilots have to have when landing the shuttle, not to make sure that they don't hit hit short of the runway and that everything goes smoothly.
Now, earlier this landing was supposed to take place 2 or 3 hours ago, but they had to delay it because of the weather. How important is it to have suitable, if not perfect, weather to do a landing like this?
Well, again, because the shuttle has absolutely no control. I mean, you're talking about a massive glider and not an aerodynamic glider at that. So if the landing conditions aren't just right for landing the shuttle, there's no way that they can abort. They can't, fly off, turn around again, try and land, because there's no engines, there's nothing. It's just the sheer speed and the last little bit of speed that they're bleeding off that is the only thing that's taking them into landing at the Space Center.
And of course, when the shuttle's in orbit, it's orbiting at a very high velocity, as well as when it's re-entering the atmosphere. What kind of G-forces do the astronauts feel inside that shuttle when they're re-entering the atmosphere?
Typically, the G-forces they're experiencing doesn't go much higher than about 6 Gs on re-entry. The sort of maximum human performance allows us to go as far as 9 Gs, but we can't sustain such high G-forces. So when re-entering, and it's all got to do with how the attitude of the shuttle is, you'll often see pictures of the shuttle as it comes into the atmosphere that they have about a 40-degree pitch up with the nose up, and that's just to reduce that G-forces exerted on the astronauts.
What happens to the astronauts from here? I mean, is there a re-acclimatization process that they had to go to? All of a sudden, there's gravity again for them.
Well, exactly, and unlike the space station astronauts, where they're up for 4 or 6 months, the astronauts do have have a reacclimatization to go through, but it's not as severe as with the space station astronauts. But what they go through is they go through some medical checks, medical briefings, make sure that everything's okay and everything's working, you know, as it was before they launched. And then that's after that, and they've all been checked out, then they head into sort of more the mission briefing, like how did things go, how did you feel the success of the mission went.
And you know, it's interesting because right as the shuttle was landing, as soon as it landed and it became clear that it landed safely and soundly, Mission Control was talking about the contributions that Discovery had made and why the mission was so important. How did the mission go?
Well, overall, the mission went well. The primary goal of the mission was to get the solar panels up and installed and get them producing power for the space station. A secondary, a popular topic was the fact of this urine processor that was on board, which was, again, one of those pieces of equipment that was preventing a full complement of crew on the space station. So that is up and running. It's been repaired and is running quite well. But one of the things that didn't quite go off completely without a hitch was the deployment of some cargo containers that were left on station. There was one where they were trying to deploy it and it didn't quite, they had a little trouble getting it into position, but while the shuttle astronauts didn't get a chance to finish that off, it's expected that the space station astronauts will complete that.
All right, Kevin Shortt, president of the Canadian Space Society, thank you for coming in and providing, I guess you could call it play-by-play as the shuttle lands. Thank you.
That's great.
And there is still more ahead on CBC News today, including a look at your national weekend weather forecast. Stay with us.